Halo is a series I enjoy quite a bit. My roommate introduced it to me with Reach and Combat Evolved, then I played CE and 2 for YouTube. You might have seen one of those videos, but they don't matter here, because today I'm playing Halo 3, a game I've never played before. And what better way to experience a game for the first time than to completely ignore the game's core mechanic? That's right, your reading comprehension skills haven't failed you yet. Today I'm going to be beating Halo 3 without using a gun. The rules are simple. Guns are bad. Throw them in the trash. Can't use them. Last time I checked, energy swords and grav hammers aren't guns, so they're fair game. So are grenades and vehicular oopsies. After falling out of the sky, the Master Chief decides to almost immediately make this challenge pointless by shoving his gun down the Arbiter's maw. Immediately following that incident, Sergeant Johnson gives us another gun, which we will only be using to smack enemies for the foreseeable future. To be careful, I let the Arbiter kill as many enemies as possible, because even though I'm not allowed to shoot, there's no rule saying he can't. Everything proceeds surprisingly smoothly, up until encountering the first Brute. I strategically lure the Brute away from the other enemies, and carefully dismantle him piece by piece, until I can steal his gun, which has a spike on it, so it'll probably hurt more when I hit aliens with it. I could have looked up this information, but that's stupid. Don't ever learn things. The US government taught me that. After splitting up into two teams, Sergeant Johnson immediately gets captured, making me think he's also decided to punch all the aliens to death. Unfortunately for him, he's not the one wearing a half-ton suit of armor that makes you hit like a Mac. Rescuing him is pretty easy. Punch the weaker enemies to death, throw a couple of grenades at the Brute with the grav hammer, then use that hammer to bash the remaining force's skulls in, saving Johnson and making our escape. We return to base. The base is under attack. Miranda Keyes, in all her brilliance, gives the stupidest order imaginable. Genuinely. How did she expect her soldiers to know what to do? They ask her where she needs them to go, and she tells them,
To war.
You should be stripped of your rank, court-martialed, and executed via firing squad for leading these men and women to nothing, really. You dig jack sh. To show you just how intelligent she is, she proceeds to walk up the stairs, cock her gun, and walk back down the stairs. She orders us to go to the hangar and clear out the invaders so our allies can escape. To show our incompetent leader just how much better we are than her in every way imaginable, we proceed to kill every enemy in our way with our bare hands, escorting every soldier who needs to get away from this moron as far away from her as possible. On the way back to the command room, my way is obstructed by the most inconvenient enemies possible. Buggers. These flying disgraces come in swarms so large and fire so many bullets, I'm riddled with holes like that one cheese in mere seconds. I throw all of my grenades at them to no avail. So I nut up and decide to just punch them out of the sky, just like the insignificant insects they are. Not long after finding a small squad of brutes, I punch their leader's head off and get my hands on his grav hammer. This runs holy grail of pain. Everything after obtaining this tool of torment is trivial. Going through the barracks, I save the civilians by killing the enemies attacking them at close range with a weapon that should clearly kill my allies as well, but for some reason doesn't. After the second group of Miranda's refugees escape her clutches, she tells me the bomb she planted got disarmed by the enemy. I can't imagine why, seeing as she left it in the middle of the command room without any attempt to hide it whatsoever. Begrudgingly, I head back over there, blow up the bomb manually, and ride the hangar elevator to safety. This level is entirely vehicle section. After stumbling on so many cars it looks like the backstage of the Oprah Winfrey Show, a Marine gets in the gunner's seat and does that thing I'm not allowed to do for me. Every enemy in my path is obliterated by me doing donuts around them while my compatriot teaches them the meaning of having many small pieces of lead lodged between their bones. I'd go into greater detail, but there aren't any other details to discuss. Arriving at my destination, it's obvious the Covenant is trying to pull in Indiana Jones by excavating an entire city to find the Ark. The Admiral isn't too happy about the massive hole in the ground they left. They want to blow these wannabe archaeologists out of the sky. Problem: all the guns on the ground would obliterate them before they even got the chance. Solution: send me to punch the anti-air guns to death. Since the game saw fit to give me yet another Ford F-150, I drive it into the nearest building and run over as many enemies as I can, while my passengers continue to break the rules of this challenge. I get out of my Dodge Ram occasionally to open some doors, but mostly stay in my vehicle to commit a special kind of manslaughter. The anti-air guns are quite weak to my donut strategy. Much like I am when it's 3 a.m., I'm trying to sleep and rednecks decide to do donuts outside of my house. After annoying the brutes until they explode with rage, they call the crab cops on my reckless driving. This walking cannon has a glaring weakness. Its engine is just sitting out in the open. So I Empire Strikes Back the walker, hop on board, and punch the motor until it explodes. Unfortunately, the last AA gun is slightly inconvenient to drive my Chevy Silverado to, so I leave it behind. This doesn't weaken me in the slightest, however, because the brute chieftain decides to deliver yet another grav hammer to me on a silver platter. I accept his generous offering and use it to slaughter all of his friends and family. The remaining anti-air gun is both stationary and has a problem with getting hotter than Florida in the middle of August. I decide to cool it down by blowing it to smithereens, allowing the Admiral to bring his ships in. The Prophet Truth responds by activating the Ark and retreating into a giant blue ball in the sky with all his ships. Look in the sky! Is it a bird? Is it a plane? No! It's a spaceship full of bloodthirsty fungus looking to consume you and your world whole. The only solution to this problem is to blast this city off the map. But first I have to go get my iPhone off the ship. How do I know it's on the ship? Well, Siri has been giving me cryptic messages that may or may not be hallucinations. Since I trust this unreliable narrator completely, I dive headfirst into the Flood hive to retrieve her. The Flood come in swarms, so they're a bit trickier to punch to death. Especially Flood spores, because they're small, hard to hit, and there's more of them than people complaining about how I played with the remaster graphics in Halo Combat Evolved. Thankfully, they aren't too hard to deal with carefully placed grenades and letting my allies do half the work. I come across both a grav hammer and energy sword right before entering the ship itself, giving me the perfect loadout to lay the smackdown on some eldritch abominations. Which is exactly why by the time I have both of them, there are no more enemies left for me to lay the smackdown upon, leaving me as empty and unfulfilled as my girlfriend. This does make grabbing my phone easier, which Wheatley immediately steals from me. Debriefing with the leaders of the elite UNSC Alliance, I find out that my AI girlfriend only left a voicemail on my phone. The message says something vague about being able to destroy the Flood with the Ark, and then she dies or something, I don't know. Since I still trust her more than the Admiral with decades of experience of war, I prepare to follow the Covenant to the Ark, not only to finish off the Flood, but to prevent the Truth from activating all those super weapons that just happen to be lying around and destroying all known life in the galaxy. I realize only too late that Miranda happens to agree with me, meaning that my plan might go horribly, horribly wrong. Arrival in the desert leads to a very similar situation we were in before, destroying Covenant ground forces to allow capital ships to land for invasion. The game gives me a sniper rifle to do this for some reason. Please. The only high-caliber weapon I need are these hands. And even if that didn't work, killing a single brute gives me a weapon that does extra melee damage, making the job go all the much easier. What makes the job even easier is digging a redneck's wet dream out of the sand and riding it into battle. My circular solution continues to work wonders on the enemy vehicles in the area, until they're all obliterated and Miranda lands her PT Cruiser. She does something smart for once and gives me a Warthog and a couple of Scorpions. Since I can't use the Scorpion's gun, I take the Warthog and continue to drive laps around the enemy reinforcements. I was very worried I'd have to use the Scorpion to blow a hole in the wall to get to the Ark's cartographer, but Wheatley tagged along and decided to make himself useful by opening some doors. Inside, I find Wheatley using a computer to do something very important, and leave him to do his business uninterrupted. Unfortunately, I have to abandon my Warthog due to my arch nemesis: narrow hallways with 90-degree turns. However, waiting for me on the other side is something so beautiful I couldn't even imagine it. A Warthog with a gun that makes things explode. The first test subject of this beautiful instrument of annihilation is yet another Scarab. Circling the vehicle allows for easy destruction of its legs, and yet again I hop on to exploit its comical weakness. Yet again 90-degree angles strip me of my beloved companion, so I take out my uncontrollable rage on the local brute population, obtaining a grav hammer in the process. Wheatley helps me read the map to find where the televangelist president is hiding, and informs me the little rat has put up a barrier around his position. More brute reinforcements arrive to avenge their fallen brethren, but I unfortunately have better things to do than slaughter them, so I dip. Now, off to assassinate their leader. In order to end the life of that religious nutjob, we have to disable the barrier around the Ark's control room first. The enemy sees our completely open attack and decides that just maybe they should do something about that, and shoots our planes down. Since I'm clearly invincible, I just hop out of the wreckage carrying some gun that I've never seen before. Shame I'll never know what it does, because I use it to beat the nearest brute to death and replace it with a brute shot. The brute shot isn't necessary for now, because surprise surprise, I find yet another truck that makes everything comically easy. I drive it to the first shield generator, waltz in the front door, leaving carnage in my wake, and just turn it off. The Arbiter appears to have done something similar, because the shield generator his squad attacked also turns off. Johnson, however, has failed yet again, so I hop in the nearest plane to go finish his job for him. For a moment I get scared that the enemy Banshees might spread me across the ground like peanut butter, since I have no way of fighting them. But I just drive around them and walk into the nearest generator room. Awaiting my grand arrival is a swarm of drones so large it makes the crowds at Times Square look like E3 2023. To make matters worse, these buggers have an escort of 2 hunters. Normally, hunters weren't difficult. Just like the rest of the enemies, I would punch them to death with relative ease. but with the unholy amount of insects flying around shooting lasers at my head, my shields would rapidly deteriorate before I could accomplish anything. Eventually, I lured the hunters into dark alleyways alone and stabbed them repeatedly with my fists, and then I ran like I had just been lit on fire to the elevator, and only just barely made it without exploding. The room with the control panel is guarded by cloaked brutes, so I used my 18 billion IQ brain to come up with the strategy of punch the air, and they all die, leaving the control panel open to me walking up to it and pressing a button. Truth is now exposed as if he were walking nude in a Walmart, so it's time to, you guessed it, punch him to death. I walk outside and am greeted with my beautiful friend, the warthog that goes boom, and I'm given not one, but 2 scarabs to absolutely eviscerate with it. After hitting both their funny buttons, I try to take the warthog with me to blow up Truth, but the game gives me the finger in the form of an invisible wall. While all this is happening, Truth tries to force Johnson to activate the Halo array for them. In this moment, Miranda decides to demonstrate her brilliant tactical mind. Her plan is to kill Johnson and herself to prevent Halo from ever being fired. How does she go about doing this? She crashes a Pelican into the control room instead of, shooting them. Crashing the Pelican somehow manages to not kill anyone, so she gets out and points a gun at Johnson, but can't even bring herself to go through with her plan, getting herself killed completely needlessly, and Johnson is then forced to activate the array. Gravemind decides to personally have his finest abominations escort us to Truth. Not that we needed any of them, because every enemy is weak to the concussive force that is my fists. The Arbiter cancels the televangelism once and for all, and we book it out of the control room after Johnson escapes, and the Flood unexpectedly, shockingly even, turns on us. Wheatley shows us that there's another Halo ring right here on the Ark, and we decide it's time to light it up like the 4th of July. Without the activation codes for Halo, that might prove difficult, but I know just where to find them. High Charity has crashed on the Ark, and Siri is probably still there unless she magically grew real legs and walked away. So it's time to dive headfirst into this hive of hostility. Things go pretty smoothly, with my only major problem being the labyrinthian nature of the Flood's new favorite rave location. The Flood must have slipped something in my drink, because not only am I hallucinating my AI girlfriend I paid $7.99 for on the App Store, I'm also hallucinating an eldritch abomination, both of whom are now spouting cryptic riddles at me, as if I look like I have enough intelligence to decipher any of them. I managed to find the holy melee duo early on in the level. Continue to find new ones to replace them with when their batteries run out. Eventually I retrieve Siri, but for real this time, and she informs me that she does in fact have the nuclear launch codes. On the way out, I decide to blow up High Charity, which goes smoothly with no problems whatsoever, and make my escape. Remember that thing we blew up in the last game? Let's do it again! But first I go back into my crashed Pelican and find an innocent golden bird, which I promptly murder. That's when I notice that this stage let me keep my weapons from the last stage. Wonderful! What isn't wonderful is that I'm almost completely out of charges. First I waste valuable time that could be used to stop the Flood to go on an Easter egg hunt my roommate told me about, and die repeatedly in the process. To vent my frustration of dying repeatedly, I stick a grenade to the Arbiter and watch as his corpse ragdolls into the nearest canyon, and then immediately respawns. Classic Arbiter. Then I climb to Halo's control room on top of that weird pyramid thing sticking outside the mountain. Wheatley informs me that he'll only let me in after destroying all the Flood in the area, so after a very long and arduous battle, I destroy all the Flood and Wheatley finally lets me in. I soon inform him that I want to fire Halo immediately, which upsets him greatly because it'll blow up his house or something. So he immediately tries to kill us all, and succeeds at killing Johnson. Wheatley demonstrates that he could have been a valuable asset in any of the battles up to now, but just chose not to do anything. I spend a long while trying to figure out how to damage him, since he consistently pushes me away anytime I try to get close to him. I have to shoot him. The run is officially dead. But hey, at least I got to find out what that gun from earlier did. I activate Halo while standing on Wheatley's corpse, ditch the disgusting firearm I was forced to use, and then use Johnson's Warthog to escape, with the Arbiter riding in the back as my gunner. We finally escape the exploding Halo and finish the game, having fired exactly 3 shots. Everyone thinks the Chief has died, probably because of the strange yet effective tactics he chose to use during the final stages of this war. Fortunately, this game is so easy even my scripted death wasn't real. The game was so easy, in fact, I bet you're wondering what difficulty I played on. The answer is easy, because I don't hate myself. If you're wondering how it would have gone on Legendary, here's your answer.